Hello everyone, welcome to BorakBaca, a series where we chat over tarik about the world of reading. In this series, we will be talking about issues around reading and bond over life, all with tarik as our companion, because as Malaysians, we sure do love our tarik. This is to remind all of us that reading is for everyone, no matter who you are and what you do. BorakBaca is an initiative by Projek BacaBaca, a project aimed to address learning poverty in Malaysia. We provide targeted, individualized support to improve children's language, literacy, and communication skills in Bahasa Melayu and English. By doing so, we also hope to develop the children's interest in reading. BorakBaca was born to raise awareness on the importance of reading as we dive into the difficulties in reading, inculcating reading habits, and spreading the love for reading. I'm Logendra, your host for today's episode. We have with us Dr Logendra the head of School of Education, Taylor's University. Morning, Dr. Logendra.
Morning. Pleasure is mine.
As we mentioned on our poster, this month's theme is Growing Up with Dyslexia. And the reason we want to make this authentically invited you, Dr. Logan, who has dyslexia, and to talk about your experiences. So, to start off, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, my name is Logan. Hi. So dyslexia is an issue that I kind of stumbled upon. I didn't know I was dyslexia. So I grew up in Malaysia in the 1970s. I was born in 1970, so I grew up in the 70s and 80s, went through the government school system. So obviously the awareness of learning disabilities were not a major issue that time. I was labeled as an incompetent student because I couldn't read, write, or spell fluently. So that was obviously an issue. So there are a lot of challenges. I don't think the school system, although there are much more awareness now, but it's still not, has not penetrated to the lowest level, I would say.
Can we go back? So you said that you were born in 70s. We're not going to ask specific year.
Yeah.
So, but to go back to your schooling years, and when did you find out that you have dyslexia?
Actually, no one found out during my schooling years because, as I said, the awareness of dyslexia wasn't there in the 80s and 90s. But there was some kind of inconsistency in the data. When you speak to me, I sound relatively intelligent. I was able to answer the questions. I was able to cope from a conversational level. But somehow when it's translated to reading and writing, I completely got lost. So no one could explain that. I mean, if I was stupid, then I wouldn't be able to do. I would be stupid in all terms. But in my case, it was quite unique. My teachers had confidence in me when they spoke to me. Orally, I was able to articulate and explain, but I just couldn't write. And then I read very slowly. So reading was it was not. I wouldn't say reading was impossible, but it was a great challenge.
So when did you finally have a name?
Finally, to name my symptom happened in first year in college. For better or worse, I ended up in Texas, in USA. So I had a teacher. So one of the telltale signs of a dyslexic student, at least that's how the counselor's advice to me was, my writing is inconsistent. Because you must understand, for us to write something is so stressful that the penmanship is the last thing the mind is focusing on. It's focusing on trying to decipher phonetics to writing, and there's so many things going on in your head. The physical hand movement is the least important. So what happens to dyslexic people generally, they have very inconsistent handwriting. So they lump. Suddenly when the word is something within my memorized word, it's smooth. And then suddenly I'm trying to figure out a new word, it's under stress, and the word becomes distorted. So the first thing this lecturer found out that people who write this way are most likely going to have dyslexia. So she used actually my handwriting to diagnose my early condition, and then subsequently I followed up with counseling and all, and then it was obvious that I had this symptom of a dyslexic person.
And how did you feel when you finally have a name?
Oh, obviously that was relieving, because I'm not stupid. I mean, there's nothing wrong being stupid, but being stupid and being dyslexic has a lot of benefit. Because now it's a medical condition. It's not, because stupid is intentional. Medical condition is an unintentional act. So being called dyslexic or being labeled my ability as dyslexic was certainly liberating.
And so going back to your schooling experiences pre-Texas,
Yeah.
right? Could you describe how was your day-to-day experiences in a language classroom? Because I would assume that is where you struggle the most. Of course,
Correct.
in other subjects,
Correct.
but language classroom specifically.
Oh, it was humiliating, I remember my friends were saying, I was Form 2, Form 3, and I was struggling with simple words like how to spell family, how to spell soccer, football, simple words that everybody take for granted that a secondary school kid could spell. I couldn't. And I couldn't express myself because the only form of accepted expression is written form. So you may have an idea, you may have something to say about an issue, but then how do you put it in writing? So you end up compromising by choosing very simple words which you can. Because remember, for a dyslexic person, because we have this disconnect between the phenomenon of connecting sound and symbols. So I may know a word roughly, but I cannot symbolize it in form of a writing. So then I have to rely on memory. So I can only use words that I have memorized, which, it's a small pool of words only you can, compared to all the language words, you only can memorize a few. So then you limit your writing, your expression to just a handful of words that you can memorize. So certainly that was a big challenge in terms of writing. So this writing, it cuts through the entire curriculum. Maybe maths and art, you can escape a bit. But, even in history, you have to write, in chemistry, you have to write. And I was probably the only guy who misspelled Malay words, although suku kata is so direct as opposed to phonics in English. But even suku kata has the same difficulty. I need to symbolize audio to visual, right? And that has always been a challenge.
And did you get any support during your schooling life?
Not really. I mean, as I said, we didn't know it was a symptom. We just thought I was lazy or stupid, right? So there was no opportunity. Of course, my mother tried a lot of effort at home. So my typical ritual in primary school was I come back from school around 1. I have my lunch. I take a power nap, get up by 3. My mom will be there, and 10 words. So every time it's like a melodramatic Tamil drama, like a Tamil serial. So at 3 o'clock, she'll give me 10 words. At 4 o'clock, she will ask me spelling. And I get 5 cuts for every wrong word. So by 4 o'clock, I'm already in tears and, all the cuts have happened. And then she will apologize for hitting me because she didn't understand why I couldn't spell. And then she will apologize, put ointment, and then we have tea at 5. So every day, Monday to Friday, is this melodramatic scene. 3 o'clock, 10 words. 4 o'clock, spelling. Every mistake is 5 cuts, so you can, out of 10 words, I'll probably get 8 of them wrong. And then there's a session of apology, then drinking tea and watching cartoon. Remember those days, cartoon starts at 5. So just nice, the whole melodramatic scene from threat, punishment, and reward between 3 to 5 p.m.
Okay. Now, from there to doing a PhD, which requires, of course, extensive reading and writing.
Yeah.
So how did you get there from where you described of struggling with spelling and getting most of the spelling wrong to writing a thesis of 100,000 words? How did you get to that?
Well, one of the things is obviously we learn to cope. We learn to cope with dyslexia, because dyslexia, as you know, cannot be solved. So it's not like, I take some tablet and next day I'm all okay. Or I go for some Chinese acupuncture, you inject in the right place, right time, release some pressure, and I'm back to normal. It's not going to happen, right? So we're going to learn to cope. So luckily, I am a big fan of technology. So we had the right voice to text, text to voice, digital pocket spell checkers, a whole bunch of technological devices I had to employ to cope. But the benefit of being dyslexic from young, everybody is dyslexic, but having these abilities, I learned to visualize my thought process. So because my PhD is very conceptual, I did problem solving in calculus. So the whole process and how people solve problem. Because when I think in diagrammatic forms. I think of flow charts. I have ideas of actual practice as opposed to ideas in a very abstract form. So obviously writing is a big challenge, but it's a pursuit that I took over a period of 6 years. So, eventually I was able to, of course, writing, getting someone to help me editing the work and all that, I received support. But the biggest advantage I had was I was able to visualize ideas better than probably people who are more fluent in language.
And do you still use this? You mentioned these coping strategies, mechanisms that you use, and technology being one of them. Now, and this is to benefit the listeners who are watching this session, parents who are watching this session. So I have two questions here. And the first one is, what other tools or strategies that you use to cope with your situation? Because as you aptly put, it's not a tablet that you can take, Panadol, a paracetamol that you can take, and your fever will subside. So, what sort of day-to-day strategies that you use in your work, after work?
Since this is an advice kind of thing, right? My first recommendation to everyone is, if you suspect there is a difficulty, it's not about physiologically, I can't read, I am visually unable to see or something like that, is to get yourself tested. Because knowing that you are dyslexic is very liberating, because otherwise constant harassment from family and friends about you being incompetent, you being lazy and all that. So that's the first thing. Because people talk about being paralyzed physically is not as harmful as emotional paralysis. And being constantly being accused of being, not committed to your work is really emotionally damaging. So that comes first, because technology and all the other things are only supplementary. The first thing is you must have some sense of self-confidence. It's not you, it's just something that you were born with and you have to deal with it. So once you overcome that hurdle, then the rest is adopting technology, knowing that, look, this is my problem and this can be a partial solution. So my typical email, let's say if I have to write an important email to an important stakeholder, has several steps. First, I craft an email. So that's my first draft. But spell checkers doesn't do us well good, because spell checker will give me 3 options. But then I need to know which of the 3 options is the word I'm looking for. So like, for example, if I was to use the word recourse, and a whole bunch of other words sound similar, are next to each other, then how do I choose the word? So I randomly choose. Luckily, the new version of Microsoft, if you click on the word, it gives you the meaning. So maybe with the meaning, I know the actual word I'm trying to look for. But then the whole essay may have some other technical error. So then after writing the whole email, I will do then text to voice reverse version. Then I hear the email again to make sure that the words I have chosen are the words that I intended to use. So this is 3 layers. First level of writing, even in the process of writing, some words may not appear clearly in my mind. Like for example, when you may use the word elephant, everybody seems to think it's an easy word. So they are depending on my stress level. I wouldn't know how the word elephant, how does it start? Because suddenly my mind cannot visualize that word. So then I have to use voice to text. That means I have to take my phone and have the relevant app and say elephant. I repeat a few times. I say, oh, this is how the word's supposed to start. Then I go and edit in. So there are several layers, the writing and then the reverse reading to confirm. So it takes 3 times the effort. But it needs to be done. I mean, I have no choice, right? I have to do it. So those are the coping mechanisms. But it only started working out for me when I realized it's not my fault. The confidence that I gained by being diagnosed with dyslexia is probably the first hurdle that we need to jump. Otherwise, society, because we live in a literate world, whether you like it or not, reading signboards, reading newspaper, everything is written. And now with smartphones and living in social media, more and more communication is done through texting and things. So literacy is playing a bigger role in our day-to-day life. So what happens to a dyslexic person who cannot cope in this literate world? It's a major challenge.
And actually, more often now, people prefer texting
Correct.
and writing than speaking.
Speaking, yeah. So it becomes a bigger challenge. So that's why parents and teachers, coaches who are really helping with the reading, helping your kids navigate the early detection it's a life changer for some.
Okay, and I have to say this because Dr. Logan is one of the few people that I admire in my life. I admire very few people in my life, and Dr. Logan is one of the very few people that I admire because of the adversities that you have faced in your life and how you have come out of it, and excelled, and how you cope with that and still coping with all this because. It is not going to be solved or cured,
correct.
Right? It's a lifelong condition, and how you cope with that, how you still do many wonderful things, many great things in life, and with that, before we end our session, Dr. Logan, if there is one message you would like to dedicate to children or teenagers with dyslexia, what would you tell them?
Actually. My mother was a great influence in my life, right? She was there. Even when I was doing badly in my public school exams and that and all, she has always been there. But the word for her is just, eventually something will work out. So the confidence that she instilled on me was eventually things will work out. So it's just about hanging in there. But for all of you all out there, especially young kids, there are a lot of things you're not going to be able to do. I mean, if you study sociology, you're doomed to fail in so many different areas depending on who you are. So instead of focusing on all the different things that you cannot do, we should start focusing on things that we can do. Eventually, see, the future is unknown. So, the problem is you say, okay, this is the destination I want to get to, and then the road seems to have a lot of obstacles, then then it becomes a big challenge. But what about if we reverse this approach to future by saying, look, these are the things I'm going to do, and this is the direction I'm going to walk. Where I reach, who is to say? But I will keep walking. Every day I will keep walking. And so same thing. I mean, I didn't know that I would be able to do PhD. So I stick to maths when I was in college because it has the least writing. So when I graduated, I had to find a job. So as a semi-literate mathematician, there is not much you can do except teach. So I decided to teach maths rather than physics, although I was trained in maths and physics. Because physics you have to write. Maths you can get away with it. So I planned my lesson in such that I only had to do the mathematical equation on the board rather than writing notes. So it's a clever planning of teaching. So I'm limited to writing the numbers rather than language. So I kind of stick to that kind of facet. Then suddenly I realized that there was so much more to learn about maths, teaching of maths, and the only way I can go forward is to do an education degree. Because remember, my first degree was maths. I was able to avoid writing extensively till I was 22, 23. Then I started doing social science in education. So, but once again, because I had to do it, right? It's not that in my mind, I had no choice. I had to do it in order to progress. And then, you just solve the problem as it appears now. And then eventually, when I finished my master's, suddenly the issue got bigger and I had to do more research because I wanted to figure out more things. And then the PhD came along, and then subsequently, whatever that came along now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Logan, for sharing with
Oh,
us
welcome.
Your experiences, and I hope the audience, people who are watching this session, will benefit from Dr. Logan's experience. And thank you so much. Till we meet again in the next session of BorakBaca. Thank you.